Welcome to my channel where we cover the lore of Final Fantasy XIV. We cover the stories both big and small, the epic and the cute, the silly and the tragic. I hope you all enjoy the ride, and welcome to the Chronicler of Lore. When the Warrior of Light swings by the manufactory for a visit, Stephanivian asks if you've had any dealings with Ishgard's watch, led by your old friend Hilda, aka the Mongrel. Since you know her, Stefan wants to talk about a problem that he has. Since the government in Ishgard has finally changed following the events in Heavensward, which I will do a recap on in the future, there have been motions to arm the city watch with Machinist equipment. That's good, since it was Stefan's goal all along. But he's been asked to give them an instructor too, which is a problem, because he doesn't have a lot of people who can fill that role, especially with everything going on in Alamigo. He's gotten requests for so many machinists that he doesn't have anyone to spare. He even had to send Joye off to help. So it falls to you to train Hilda in her watch, alongside Rostenthal. Once you find the man, that is. Word on the street is that he's in Idleshire, so you and Stefan head there to try and convince him to come back. When you track him down, it takes a little bit of flattery to get him to even come back to the city, but he won't make his final decision until he meets Hilda. You find her in the middle of arguing with a temple knight who doesn't seem all that happy to be working with her. Just because things are starting to change in the city doesn't mean it's going to happen everywhere all at once. Either way, Hilda's already told her people that they were going to get trained by the savior of Ishgard, and they're all very happy about it. She was also expecting Rost, and the blunt way she talks about both her men and the dangers of living in the back alleys of the Broom makes the pirate interested enough to find out a little bit more about the people he might agree to train. Hilda's group has been hired by the Houses of Ishgard to operate as a reserve force meant to fill in if the Temple Knights are called away to work with the Eorzean Alliance. It's a good deal since it's basically what they've been doing all along. But a lot of nobles still don't like the idea of commoners going around with weapons and organized. Hilda thinks that'll all change if she can show everyone that the watch is worth having around. To do that, they need training and proper equipment, which is how they ended up where they are. Rost agrees to help train them, and the first thing they need is a name that sounds like it fits in with groups like the Dragoons or the Heavensward. They settle on the name Hilda's Hounds, which isn't bad, but it's still not as cool as something like the Crimson Duelists. Rost decides that the two of you will split the training. He'll teach the Hounds the basics, then you'll come back and see how much they've learned, which sounds fair since you have a lot more important things to do with your time. Rost makes some decent progress pretty fast, but none of the Hounds seem to have the same talent that you and Joye did, so there's not much for you to do on the training side, but Hilda does have a favor to ask you. The watch has been given its first big job. They're supposed to stand guard at the Temple Knight's investiture ceremony. The event's important, and putting the watch in charge is supposed to help boost the unity between the high and low-born people, but if the Hounds mess it up, that'll likely be the end of them. They're getting ready to discuss the security for the event, and Hilda wants you to come, mainly to keep her from shooting the Temple Knight Muscadine. She really doesn't seem to like him for some reason. Of course, he's the one waiting for the two of you when you reach the congregation, and he and Hilda trade insults like an old married couple, until a knight comes running in claiming that a thief has broken into the vault and stolen the sacred blade Runting, the sword used to enlist new knights. The bigger question is, how did someone break into the vault? When you did it, there were a lot of guards, and the door to the treasury has 7 locks, as well as guards standing there day and night. Stealing from there should be almost impossible. The guards claim that they were knocked out, and when they woke up, they saw the door was open. All the other treasures were still there, but the sword was missing. The entire attack only lasted a few minutes, so someone knew exactly what they were doing. Losing the sword right before the ceremony will not do good things for Emeric's reputation, which could basically lead Ishgard back to the brink of a civil war, which means the sword has to be found before the word spreads. Unfortunately, Muscadine doesn't have the time or the knights to start searching. Hilda offers to use her troops to find it since they all know how to keep their mouths shut, plus the Hounds can't afford to have anything stop the ceremony. Getting on Emeric's good side won't hurt either. Muscadine reluctantly gives Hilda the go-ahead before heading off, so the two of you head out to speak to the captain of the Treasury Guard. The man was expecting you, and he hands you something found at the crime scene that might help with your investigation. A piece of metal was found stuffed into one of the keyholes of the broken locks on the treasury door, and it looks like it might be a bullet. Hearing the mention of bullets and firearms causes a noblewoman to walk up asking if there had been another crime committed with one of the Machinist's weapons. Apparently somebody's been out in the Western Highlands terrorizing people with a musket. Even the traders are worried about it. It all makes the woman wonder if working with foreign nations and arming commoners will destroy Ishgard. Hilda tries to question the woman, but she outright ignores her, a habit the more traditional nobles still have. But she did say that the bandit was out near Hemlock, so Hilda decides to head out there while you take the bullet to Stefanivian to see if he can figure out just where it came from. After that, she wants you to meet her in Hemlock just in case she needs some help. Stefan sadly can't tell you much about the bullet, so you head out to find Hilda, who is in the process of getting mauled by wolves. So there's more of the Warrior of Light's incredible ability to show up in the nick of time. You save her and find that the wolves had collars, meaning someone had trained them and set them there to guard the place. Adding that to the signs that someone's been living in the area proves that the noble lady might not have been lying, but it's too cold to stay out there, so the two of you head back to Ishgard to go over what Hilda found. She'd pulled a piece of paper off of the fire by the camp, and it hadn't been burned too badly for her to read. It was a contract to sell runting to a Lamensin merchant. The merchant's name wasn't mentioned, but Ross knows of him. He's built a big trade empire off of doing illegal stuff. The man got stopped at a checkpoint on the border since the knights were looking for a stolen sword, and the last time they saw him he was heading toward the Boulder Downs. So if you find the merchant, you could just watch him until the sword thief shows up to sell it. Hilda tries to convince Ross to come with her, which he agrees to after he complains a bit. If he's going to give in all the time anyway, he might as well just stop complaining. But he does order you to come too, which you were going to do anyway. Hilda and her people track down the merchant easily enough. He's in the middle of doing a deal, so she sends one of her people to make sure he's dealing with the thief you want. Then she decides to send you to back him up because even with Ross training, he still might mess things up. The bandit that the merchant is talking to is your guy, but he hadn't stolen the sword for the merchant. The original client had given the sword back for some reason, so the bandit had sought out someone else to sell it to, a job the merchant is eager to take. Since you found your target, Sime gives Hilda a call and she gets ready to attack. When the merchant sees the Ishgardians, he does the smart thing and drops the sword and runs. The bandit calls out to his men who were hiding nearby because nobody with a brain would have thought the man was out there alone, and it turns into a battle between Hilda's Hounds and the bandits. With Ross training, you and the Hounds put up a good fight, forcing their leader to run away after he sicks his pet monster on you. Hilda's men chase him while you face off against the giant Torama. The battle gives you a lot of prisoners, as well as the stolen sword, but the leader gets away. It's still a victory, so Hilda and the Hounds head back to Ishgard with the prisoners. During the fight, Ross saw the leader's weapon, and he thinks he knows where it came from, so he's going to look into that before he comes back to Ishgard. Hilda's not too happy about that since it means her men won't have a trainer, but she does want to know where the weapons came from too, so she's okay with waiting a little while for their trainer to get back. When you go to check on her again, Hilda's gotten a letter from Rost. Since it was addressed to you, she didn't open it, but she really wants to know what's in it now that you finally showed up. The weapon came from a supplier who smuggled it into Lemsa, and Ross wants you to hurry up and get there so you can track them down. Hilda, of course, wants to come too, even though her being on foreign lands and causing problems could make a mess for Ishgard. But she wants to go, and nobody's going to talk her out of it, so it's off to Lemsa you go. Ross is a little confused as to why Hilda's there since he sent a letter to you to avoid a whole political incident, but it is what it is. Turns out the guy who sold the weapons is the same merchant who tried to buy the sword, which means that with a little bit of rough persuasion, he should be willing to tell you where the bandits ran off to. The merchant's not that hard to find, and after Ross threatens to turn him over to the rogues since he's breaking the code by trading weapons in the city, the man tells you to check Providence Point in Central Highlands for your target. After threatening to remove some body parts from the man if he sells any more weapons, the three of you head off. You find the bandit leader right where the merchant said, and after he sends 2 Torama at you this time, where does the man keep getting the things from? He begs you all not to kill him. Ross won't if the man tells him who hired them to steal the sword in the first place. Originally, the bandit had been a pirate, at least until the admiral outlawed it in Lemsa. Since a 9-to-5 really wasn't his thing, him and his men were at a loss for what to do until a peddler brought a very rich woman to see them. She hired them to steal the sword and paid the crew enough to steal the whole building if she'd asked. She never told any of them her name and they didn't care since they needed the money. She bought his weapon for him and sent them down a path in the vault that wasn't even guarded. The job was easy until they made the delivery. The woman gave the sword back along with some more money. She claimed she'd made a mistake and told him to just sell the sword, so he went back to the merchant. But he didn't fully burn his contract, which is how you found it. Problem is, he never had a contract, and he definitely wouldn't have left it whole. Ross puts two and two together pretty quick and realizes that everything from the theft to Hilda finding the contract was all done on purpose. The only question is why, and Hilda thinks that those answers will come in Ishgard because she has a strong feeling that whoever had the sword stolen just wanted to get their hands on it for a moment before sending it back. She wants to examine the blade, and for that, she has to talk to Muscadine. Of course he's not happy to see her. Those two really hate each other for some reason, but he listens to what the two of you have to say. Seeing how dedicated Hilda is to doing her job right, despite how much she can't stand him, actually makes him smile, but he can't just hand the weapon off to the Hounds, and the blacksmith has already checked the weapon and said it was fine. But to appease Hilda, he decides to take the weapon to Stefanivian so the machinist can see what he finds, just in case the smith missed something. While Muscadine makes the legal arrangements, you and Hilda head back to the broom to tell Rost and the others what happened. It doesn't take long for Stefan to finish looking over the sword, and when you all, including Muscadine, get to the manufactory, he lets you know that there was a bomb in the hilt. It was one of the ones that Stefan made for the Temple Knights to train with, and it was meant to be detonated from a good distance away. He's deactivated it, of course. The bombs aren't all that powerful and would only burn the hand of the one holding it, but if the blade is dropped during the ceremony, the crowd would say that the gods are questioning Emeric's authority, and the Hounds would be blamed. The fact that it seems like someone is trying to discredit the Hounds makes Stefan think about all the rumors that the nobles have been talking about. They claim that the Hounds set up the theft so they could solve it and look like heroes. With everyone already being suspicious of Hilda and her people, the sword hilt exploding would definitely be the end of their group. Muscadine doesn't even know how the rumors started, since no one was supposed to know that the sword had been stolen in the first place, unless the woman who arranged the theft was an Ishgardian noble in the first place. Then she would have known the sword was gone because she would have paid to make it happen. The woman is likely trying to maintain the status quo, but the Hounds being armed commoners messes that up. So getting rid of all of you may lead to disarming all the commoners once again, which means you need to find the woman and stop her. Stefan's a step ahead of you, and he built a device to track the detonator for the bomb that's in the sword. You find it, and you find the woman. Muscadine wants to catch her at the ceremony, which Hilda agrees with as long as you're all ready to fight the people that she definitely has working with her. To not draw suspicion, Muscadine and most of the Hounds will work their regular security positions, while you, Hilda, and a few others look for the noblewoman with the detonator. Stefan's device detects the woman in the broom, so you rush off there to find, surprise, the woman who dropped the hint about the bandits when this all first started. Really don't know how they didn't figure out that she was behind it from the beginning, but apparently the Warrior of Light is only observant when the plot demands it. However, just because you caught her doesn't mean you have the evidence to prove anything, and a group of knights who already don't like the commoners anyway see you harassing a noble and they step in claiming the Hounds are the real criminals. Stefan tries to explain, but the knights draw their weapons, making it obvious that they were part of the plot to get rid of you all too. Which explains how the woman knew how to get through the vault and how to use the bomb. This turns out good in Hilda's eyes because she gets to shoot people she doesn't like, and it's perfectly legal. During the fight, the noblewoman runs off, looking for another knight to tell that the savage commoners are attacking her. The plan would have worked if the knight she ran into wasn't Muscadine. He'd already captured the person working with her at the ceremony, and the man sang like a canary, so Muscadine knows everything. The woman can't understand why someone chosen for prosperity like Muscadine would side with the commoners, but the whole concept of being chosen is completely foreign to the man. Him being born noble gave him the right to fight for his country, one that he is happy to share with anyone who's willing, and he's more than willing to fight anyone who threatens Ishgard, noble or commoner alike. The woman sees this as blasphemy, and she tries to kill you all by turning into a dragon. So she's fighting heretics by becoming one. That makes a whole lot of sense. But she's not the first dragon you've dealt with, and you all beat on her until she transforms back. Apparently the woman and her allies thought only the nobility should lead in Ishgard, and the formation of the Hounds was too big of a threat to ignore. Hilda doesn't get it. The commoners just want a little respect and the right to fight for their nation. It's really not that much, but even Muscadine admits that he feels a little uncomfortable with the loss of noble power, so he can understand why they did what they did. He does admit that he was wrong about Hilda though. He thought she hated her status so much that she was trying to destroy the nation, and had it not been for her dealings with you and Emmerich, he wouldn't have been wrong. Muscadine apologizes for all the insults he threw at her and her people, and she admits that he didn't deserve all the names she called him either, but it's hard to not see her dad's face every time she looks at her brother, and it just makes her mad. But at least now the two siblings will have a better working relationship in the future as defenders of Ishgard. This concludes the third part of the Machinist storyline. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and ding that notification bell. And if you want to buy me a coffee for my work, sign up to become a member of the channel. Until next time guys, later.